Hi, I'm Hassan Luongo. Very nice to meet you guys. I think our founders did a nice job introducing you guys to the business, so lean into a little bit of their backstory to kind of show where we are and how we got here. As quick introduction, I'm Hassan Luongo. I'm the VP of Global Marketing at Chipper Cash. We're based in San Francisco. We have offices in Nairobi, in Lagos, in Accra, in Cape Town, and small team in New York as well. So we're a global remote company with our founders are both African immigrants, came to the U.S., met in college, started building the business, and have grown it from there. I think today we're about 400 people. So we've gotten to a decent amount of size. Currently, about 60% of our team is based on the African continent. The rest in the UK, US, and a couple other places. Just like everybody else on a global remote side. For a little bit of context on the team, our marketing team is about 21 people. We are a very local global company, right? So we're building a global brand, and then we're executing at the local level in whatever market that happens to be in. So if you're in Lagos, you have a different market than you're in Uganda, for example. So just to give you guys a little bit of background, and then we'll dive in. So full stop, right? Chipper Cash was created to solve the everyday financial challenges of Africans. We exist to enable the ambition of the continent, and our mission is really about trusted, accessible financial services to as many people as possible. Whether you're sitting in Accra, Ghana, or you're sitting in New York trying to send money to Accra, Ghana, that experience needs to be fast, inexpensive, and near instant. One of the main things is that when you're sending money, the person on the other side needs it now, right? It's not a 4-day lag thing. It's not a cool, I'll get to it next week. The money transfers, especially diaspora into the home country, are very time sensitive, right? So at the absolute core, it's just the app just needs to work and be reliable, and money needs to move, and then everything else sits on top of that. And so, when we started off, right, it was 2 countries. It was Uganda to Kenya, and from there we just started layering in additional corridors and markets. But that original problem of intra-Africa remittances, if you think about the U.S., for example, obviously it's much different. There's one country, one monetary, one currency, and all of that, and then here we're talking about, again, 54 countries. Each one has a different currency, different valuations on the currency, different demand for those currencies, different supplies for it. There's a lot of stuff there. What it actually ended up to be, it was just, as one of our co-founders mentioned, it's just incredibly expensive, right? You end up paying 5 times as much as you were, for the fees than for the money that you were spending. So it really was just massively broken and not working, right? And then there's the other side of it is that, what we see from the stats, if you look at your World Bank stats and your IMF stats and various things like that, the way that this gets reported is there is an informal market and then there is a formal market, right? The formal market is big and growing, right? The informal market is massive and growing faster, right? And so for Chipper to really kind of realize its full potential, we have to bring in that informal market where cash is king and kind of show them a better, easier way to do this that's more reliable, faster, lower rates, all of those different things, right? You can win on product experience there because the other option is awful, right? And then there's a lot of growth here, right? So there's a lot more coming in terms of where the continent is going and what's going to be happening over the next couple of decades. Absolutely. So then, where are we, right? And we're looking at this market, and we see it as a fast-growing emerging market. But there's some pretty staggering stats behind this as well, right? So Lagos, which is the capital of Nigeria, not the capital, but the largest city in Nigeria, is now like the third or fourth biggest city in the world, just behind Mexico City, projected to become the second or third largest city in the world in the next like 10 years, right? So the population is absolutely massive. Nigeria as a country will soon replace the US as the third most populous country in the world, right? Africa is the fastest growing continent in terms of population growth for a long time, right? Funnily enough, population growth is now like a new buzzword. I don't know if you guys have been seeing this on Twitter, but people are starting talking about population growth and the needs and the needs for this. So it's actually just really interesting, right? You do get Western economies that are much, much older, right? And aging quicker, and then you have emerging markets in these economies that are young and growing very fast, right? Case in point, right? 70% of folks in sub-Saharan Africa under the age of 30, right? So fast-growing, large market, lots of development challenges, which we'll get into later, but the opportunity is absolutely staggering. Kind of a quick check on where we are, right? So in June of this year would have been our 4th year in operation. We currently have about 5 million customers on the platform. We're live in 5 markets today, 5 markets in Africa, and then including the US and the UK for the diaspora side. 1.5 billion in total process volume last quarter. We recently launched a cards product about a year ago, and we're up to 300K cards issued and growing quite quickly in that category as well. As everybody, as mentioned before, we are an app-only product, right? The only way to experience Chipper, you can go to the website, you can, it's like a catalog or whatever, you can learn about the product, and then everything goes download into the App Store, right? So in terms of the financial services products that we offer, right, our absolute core service is peer-to-peer payments, right? This is Venmo and Cash App type of an experience that you guys know well. The difference there is that we have a cross-border component. So on Venmo and Cash App, of course, it's US to US or UK to UK or whatever that might be. Ours has a cross-border side. There's obviously lots of other apps that you can use to send money across border, but slightly different in our context where the sender and the receiver are using the product, right? We also have a cards product. So in Nigeria, we have a USD card and a Nigerian card. The USD card is there to enable people to use like subscription services, sign up for Netflix and Spotify and those types of things. And then NGN is used for shopping locally on e-commerce websites and services like that. We have a very robust crypto offering. We've been pretty early and strong on crypto all the way through. The interesting thing about crypto is it's regulated very differently between different countries. And so in some countries, our crypto product is alive and well. In some countries, it's like hidden and you can't access it, which is a bit of a shame, but that's how it goes, right? And then fractional stocks. So this is buying small slices. So with as little as $1, you can buy Apple and Netflix and Tesla and all of that thing. So it's just access to the US and global financial markets in some of those countries. Last October, we launched that in Uganda and was the first fractional stock investing product in the country. Airtime and data, this is very commodity size, but it's obviously interesting for folks in the US when we all buy our airtime and data on a contract basis, right? This is pay as you go, and that's the default. So having access into those services so you can top up your phone and do that is key. And then our network API, which is our business to business side where we work with large merchants that need to settle large volumes on the continent, right? So big opportunity and plenty of challenges, right? So let's look through some of the challenges on the market level. Africa is in fact a collection of countries, and most of them considered to be emerging markets, right? Different countries are at different stages of smartphone adoption, right? So in a lot of places, people are entering into that experience for the first time, right? In a lot of places, it's the latest iPhone, and they've been using these services for a long time. But you have very different scales of entry in terms of like the mobile product life cycle, right? very different regulatory environments as well, right? So in the U.S., again, you're talking to one set of rules that dictate the entire landscape. Here, you're talking about very different rules in different countries, and you have to adapt and get licensed and do that at each level. So we spend a lot of time on licensing, right? We have a big regulatory team that is out acquiring licenses in various countries for our product to kind of reach potential. And then product parity by market. When you have different regulatory environments, you have different products in market, right? Which is just an additional challenge for the marketing team to figure out, okay, what's the emphasis, what's the priority to move on, right? Being early, so the biggest thing that we see is building trust, right? So when you're a bank and you have branches in all of the different markets that you're in, there's a certain physicality, trust there that at the end of the day, if you absolutely have a problem, you could walk into the bank and yell at somebody, right? And for an app-only environment, like you can't, and people get frustrated, right? So a lot of the things that we do are just simply about building trust. We think about different channels. A good example would be like the billboards that you see out there. While you don't see any billboards in New York City, if you're in Lagos, Nigeria, you would see Chipper quite prominently in a bunch of places. And that is less about customer acquisition and it's more about trust, right? We want people to be able to see that the brand exists in the market, which is an additional challenge of being app only, right? And then customer education. Again, like when you have customers at different stages of the life cycle, you just have to be aware of all of the different entry points, right? For a lot of people, this is the first time they're using an app-based financial service. Again, they're on the other side, you have some very savvy crypto traders and currency exchange folks that use these things like in a way that is far superior to the way that I've ever used an app, right? I mean, like the speed and the expertise there varies on two extremes, right? And so that again just presents many different challenges. And how do you engage people? How do you meet people in the middle? How do you find journeys to bring people into some of your more niche products? And then how do you keep the general population sort of engaged and moving through that typical sort of customer journey, right? Definitely an interesting problem and one that we're just trying our best at, like everybody else, right? So some of the so here's some examples of some of the outdoor that we have in different markets. The last one is the largest billboard in Nigeria, for example, in Lagos. And some stats, right? So Chipper continues to grow very quickly. Our main sort of KPI that we track is monthly active transactors. Very strong quarter, 150% quarter-over-quarter growth, and that's not starting from zero. That was from a fairly robust baseline. We recently completed some brand awareness surveys in the main markets that we're in. We rank really well in Uganda for unaided brand awareness for payments apps and financial services apps, and third in Nigeria, and easily Nigeria is one of the most competitive markets in the world. So to land there in 4 years, we're pretty happy about that, and then know that that's like just step one in the journey as well. So lots to go there. As mentioned, first fractional stock product in Uganda, and then over 60% of our team is based in market, right? So what our job is to bring best-in-class workflows, processes, tools, and then adapt to local market norms and use those effectively, right? So it's definitely not like hey, we know all the things to do, let's just go execute this playbook. We've tried that and iterated and fell on our face a couple of times for sure. And so in the reality of it, it's like setting the goals, understanding the data, and then effectively using the tools, but customizing what actually lands on that user's push notification to be very relevant to where they are in that moment in their journey using the product, right? That's where we win versus just sending lots of push notifications or SMS or whatever, right? Like again, as you guys know. So we think of this as personalization at scale. We have a lot of users, we have a lot of niches and segments and journeys and all of that. This is going to look familiar to you guys, but this is a view of our sort of journey mapping in Airship. And whoops, let me go back. We've seen some good numbers coming from this. We've seen a nice increase in our first opens. Our conversion rates into some of our key KPIs are looking pretty good as well. We have a lot of journeys and a lot of experiences, so at the same time that we're trying to do sort of mass customization, we're also at the same time trying to simplify it, right? And make sure that we understand what we're doing and we're not just kind of ad hoc building all these journeys and sending users into these places to never see them again, right? So it's a scale plus also keeping a simple model that allows us to like see something and react quickly enough versus just kind of like getting a bunch of data and being like, what does this mean? And everybody goes, I don't know, so we definitely experience both sides of that problem as well, right? So some of the kind of key results that we've seen, right? That Forbes article was tier 1 media that's hard to come by, right? So we were recently named in the FinTech 50 last year. Our founders, hopefully this what is it called? That 30 under 30 thing is coming out, and hint, hint, we might rank in there pretty well this year. We'll see. And so we were recently on CNN talking about the need for, our founders were recently on CNN talking about the need for additional investment and more funding to flow into Africa than it has before. Last year was a record-breaking year for venture capital in Africa. I believe it was over $5 billion went in, which is quite something compared to what it was previously, but in fact is only a micro fraction of total venture capital dollars that are being deployed, right? So on one side of it, we're like, yeah, that's good. On the other side, we're like, we're just getting started. There's a lot more problems to solve, right? And it's not just in our context, but for the whole ecosystem, right? We have been successful on the fundraising side for sure. Everybody knows last year was a pretty good market. Last couple of years have been pretty good for early stage fundraising opportunities. Certainly has gotten tighter over the last 6 months, and seeing where this all lands is kind of anybody's guess. But we're hoping it starts to certainly sweeten up here in the next 6 months, and some of these gunpowder that all the venture capital firms are sitting on starts to get deployed in the market and things start moving again. From a pure business perspective, right, outside of external stuff like fundraising, right, we're doing quite a large volume of capital moving through the platform every day, week, month, quarter, right? So it's early stage for kind of where we are. We definitely put ourselves in that area where we want Chipper to be a generation-defining company, right? We want to kind of really step outside and lead this across the continent. We have a lot of challenges, and we have a lot of core work to do to make the experience really great for the end user. And it's simply, I think, if we do that and continue to execute, I think we're going to be in a really good spot. So coming up for us, right, is this idea of customer activation at scale. Like many app-only businesses, it's very black and white, right? Either you engage the user early on and get them into the product, right? Or they are downloaded, checked it out for 5 minutes, maybe got halfway through registration and they ghost, right? And so for us, it's very important that we kind of try to hook those people in very early. So we use a whole kind of incentivized model to bring people into a couple of core use cases, land them in the product, show them a little bit of value, and then sort of build on it from there, right? And so in each country, in each market, we're thinking about what's that sort of fast, high-value experience where we can show some immediate either cost savings or wow, that's cool, or I can't believe that money landed so quickly type of experiences where we excel and win against the overall market. And if we can land those moments early on and we can give people a good idea of these are the various things that you can do on Chipper that you may or may not have ever done before, right? Then we win. If we don't get that across as well as we don't end up just completely overwhelming the user by hitting them with 50 messages about all the amazing things that they can do when they really just need to send money to their cousin because it's their birthday, right? And so part of that is like there's always a need driving the transfer. So it's like get in there, show some value, but also get out of the way fast enough to let that user kind of go through and fulfill whatever need they came to you for, right? And then bring them back into some of the value-added financial services with super high retention value. If you bring a user into crypto, if you bring a user into a cards product, their month 3, I was just looking at this stat this morning. Their month 3 retention rate is like 8x higher than users that don't activate into those products, right? So there's some core stuff that leads to long-term retention, and we have a very short window in order to do that, right? We also need to expand monetization. So one of our initial growth strategies is that for local transfer, so in Uganda, for example, if you send money to somebody, you pay a fee, right? So you pay a fee to load your wallet and to send the money, right? If you're using a different service. On Chipper, it's free, but it's free because we subsidize it in order to get people into the other products, right? So that's how we landed in the market. We're saying we're taking this thing that should not cost money, but does cost money and only costs money here and doesn't cost money everywhere else, and saying, no, we're going to make this free, and then we're going to have a bunch of other ways to, where the company can make money. This is cross-border sends, crypto, fractional stock investing, all of our kind of value-added services is where we as a company make money, right? We're going to continue building a global brand. We work with some of the best influencers in the world when it comes to Africa, for sure. And that's where we really lead and win on brand is kind of bringing those people that represent the continent at the highest level together with the brand and go and tell stories, right? This is, and then targeted consistent visibility in market. We're gonna make sure we still have a presence. When you're walking down the street in Kampala, Uganda, you're gonna see a couple of billboards and you're gonna be reminded that Chipper is like an actual company that exists in the real world. And then, we'll continue to be rooted in Africa. We're very early in that entire cycle. But in order to serve Africa, you have to also serve the world, right? It's not a static state or market, right? Those markets are hugely represented in the UK, in Canada, throughout various parts of the United States, right? And there is a very strong flow of kind of students coming in, studying. They are the recipient of the remittances at that point, and then they come in, they start their careers and work, and then they become the provider of the remittances as well. This is kind of a diaspora context of that. And so having both inbound into the US as well as outbound in the US is kind of how we serve those markets as well, right? And let's see, so that's it for me. In conclusion, just a couple of quick points, right? Data-driven decisions are, and personalization, right, with high brand focus is gonna be the core of our marketing strategies going forward, right? It's brand plus growth. The nuances within each market, definitely super interesting. We continue to try to raise our market level intelligence up to a point where it's really becomes less of a challenge and more of an advantage, right? And that's investing in local teams, investing in research, and really kind of building a lot of the research that we want to go out and get that doesn't exist in the market and saying, cool, we have a good base, let's go out and do it ourselves, right? And we want to win in Africa, right? So,
making bold decisions, staying super aggressive, and then using data, using the tools effectively that we have here. We have, MarTech is probably in a more interesting and compelling state than it's ever been. We have all kinds of capabilities and things at our fingertips, and so just empowering our own team to use those tools to customize it at the local level, and if we can play that well, I think we've got a lot of good times ahead. So thank you guys very much for listening, and pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.